Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another segment of Classical Greek Values and Modern Realities, sponsored by the Aristotle and Alexander Press. Today's segment is called The Fine and Dramatic Arts from Homer to Hollywood. And with us, we have again today Harrison Sheppard.
Thank you, Dmitry. It's really easy to relate modern realities in the fine and dramatic arts to classical Greek values, and to talk about Homer to Hollywood. The first great epic hero in our literature was Achilles. The film Troy, produced just a year or two ago with Brad Pitt, tells the tale of Achilles and Hector and Paris and Helen. Hollywood still draws on the epic of Homer, both the Iliad and the Odyssey. The fact is that Odysseus was the second great epic hero and is the subject of films, both here in America and abroad. But the very nature of dramatic art and theater has its origins in Greece. Aeschylus, Euripides, and Sophocles were the great founders of Western drama, tragedy, and comedy. Aristophanes' play, The Clouds, which spoofed Socrates, showing him to be living in a basket, is the source, one of the earliest sources of our ideas of comedy and satire. The idea that the dramatic arts on the tragic side is something that, according to Aristotle, allows us to experience pity and terror vicariously, is something that we certainly still see in Hollywood's movies. When we see the terror of horror movies, the violence that can inspire fear in action movies. We have no difficulty going from Homer to Hollywood in understanding how deeply ancient classical Greek values have influenced our fine and dramatic arts. Sculpture certainly had its origins in ancient Greece. We still admire the ancient classical sculpture as much as any works of art in the Western canon. Homer to Hollywood simply sums up the fact that in terms of classical Greek values and understanding what moves us as human beings in the great drama of life are still the same things that were tried to capture, at least in good movies. In the book that Aristotle and Alexander Press is about to produce, Too Much for Our Own Good, every chapter actually begins with a movie. It begins with a movie to set the scene for a serious discussion of how our economic lives, our social lives, our political lives have been adversely affected by our loss of some of our classical Greek values. So we use the drama that had its origins in ancient Greece in the form of modern films made by Hollywood and foreign producers as well, to illustrate how much modern realities can benefit from a return to a greater understanding of the classical Greek values, particularly, as we have said before in these segments, the understanding of Aristotle, panmetron ariston, balance in all things is best. So while drama deals with the highs and lows of human experience, the classical Greek value of moderation can also be seen to be reflected in our modern realities in terms of what we should aspire to in remembering those classical Greek values.
Harrison, what do you think the ancient playwrights or even the people of ancient Greeks would think about these big budget action movies today?
Well, the ancient Greeks in their theater certainly appreciated action. I think that both the playwrights and the people, sophisticated people of ancient Greece, would have distinguished in these big budget action movies between movies that really had a point to all the violence that we see in those movies. I think they would have found a lot of it silly and childish. Certainly there was violence in the ancient Greek plays. There were murders in Medea, and Oedipus tears his eyes out at the end of the play. But those acts of violence, and customarily, by the way, when Oedipus takes out his eyes, it's done off stage, those acts of violence had a point. In the case of Oedipus, for example, his blinding himself is a metaphor for the fact that he sees now that he did not see, that he was blind, and blinds himself physically to gain new inner insight. So I think that the ancient Greek playwrights would have appreciated action movies if there was any point to the action. But gratuitous violence that doesn't have a reason for being in terms of illuminating some aspect of our human condition, I think that they would have found frivolous. Unlike the Romans, the ancient Greeks did not seem to be much interested in spectacle for its own sake. They were much more deeply interested in the human drama, the drama of the human condition. So I think that they would not have approved or appreciated or celebrated these big budget action movies if they were senseless violence instead of some drama that told us something serious about ourselves.
Thank you very much, Harrison. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us next week. The topic will be the idea of the hero, human greatness in thought and action. The series is sponsored by the Aristotle and Alexander Press. Until next Saturday, thank you and have a great week.